Drink, or watch your pack fade with the winter. The Alpha King's voice crossed the frozen hall like a door closing, and Claire Bennett stared at the crystal cup held inches from her lips. Snowglass shimmered inside it, clear as melted ice and bright beneath the moonlight pouring through the high windows. Around them hundreds of wolves stood in silence, wrapped in silver, black, and white, their attention fixed on the rejected Luna kneeling before the throne. 3 years ago, Ethan Blackwood had called her his destiny. Tonight, he was asking her to prove she had not cursed his kingdom. Claire lifted her eyes to his. He looked every inch the ruler the northern packs feared. Broad shoulders beneath a dark ceremonial coat, pale skin almost colorless in the cold, and silver-gray eyes that revealed nothing. Yet she saw what the court did not. His fingers trembled around the cup. A thin line of silver marked the corner of his mouth before he turned his face toward the shadows. The white-veined sickness had already reached him. "You rejected me once," Claire said softly. Her voice carried farther than she expected. "Must you condemn me twice?" A murmur stirred through the chamber, but Ethan did not look away. "If you are innocent, Snowglass will show us." "And if I am not?" Madeline Cross answered from beside the throne, her smile as smooth as polished marble. "Then the moon will finally give Frostfang justice." Claire felt the old mate bond ache beneath her ribs, faint but living, a thread of warmth buried under years of silence. It should have vanished the night Ethan rejected her before the pack. It should not have allowed her to feel his heartbeat now, slow and uneven, echoing against her own. She looked beyond him to the banners hanging above the throne. Frostfang's white wolf had once been her crest too. Now her name had been erased from every royal record. As if kindness, loyalty, and sacrifice could disappear because a king commanded it. Ethan brought the cup closer. "Drink." Claire wrapped both hands around the glass. Cold climbed into her palms at once, sharp and unnatural, but she refused to let the watching nobles see her fear. If she stepped back, the villages would call her guilty. If she obeyed, Snowglass might take everything she had left. Still, behind Ethan's command, she felt something he would never admit. Terror. Not for the kingdom. For her. Claire raised the cup and swallowed. The liquid tasted like winter air before a storm. Cold spread through her throat and chest, stealing her breath as the hall blurred into silver light. She heard someone call her name. Ethan. Not King Blackwood. Not the ruler who had judged her. The man who had once promised never to let her face darkness alone. Claire's knees touched the marble. One tear slipped down her cheek and struck the floor. Instead of vanishing, it hardened into a tiny crystal flame. Then another fell. And another. The crystals raced across the marble, joining beneath the throne until they formed a grave of clear blue ice. The court recoiled. Ethan stepped down, his face suddenly stripped of every royal mask. Letters appeared across the frozen stone, glowing beneath the moon. Ethan Blackwood. Below his name a date emerged. 7 days from tonight. The date glowed across the frozen stone, and for one suspended moment, even the torches seemed afraid to move. Ethan stared at his own name while the court whispered around him, but Claire heard only the broken rhythm of his heart through the bond he had once tried to destroy. 7 days. That was all the Snowglass had given him. Then the vision pulled her backward, to the morning before the trial, when she had still believed the past could no longer reach her. 12 hours earlier, Claire had been kneeling beside a narrow bed in a border village nearly 30 miles from the royal palace. A little boy named Henry lay beneath 3 wool blankets, his pale face damp with fever and his fingertips marked by thin white lines beneath the skin. The white vein sickness had reached the children first. Claire placed both hands around his and let her quiet gift move through him, not as fire or force, but as warmth spreading through a frozen room. Henry opened his eyes. "Will I turn into ice?" he whispered. Claire swallowed the fear that tightened her chest. "No. You are going to see spring." She did not know whether it was a promise or a prayer. Outside, snow pressed against the windows, though autumn had not yet ended. Frostfang had endured hard winters before, but this cold felt unnatural. Wells froze overnight. Livestock refused to leave their shelters. Families woke to find silver frost crawling across the inside of their doors. Claire had spent 3 years helping villages the royal healers rarely visited, asking for no payment and never using the title that once belonged to her. To them, she was simply Claire Bennett, The quiet Omega who stayed until the fever eased. Hooves sounded beyond the cottage. A moment later, royal guards entered the village square beneath black banners bearing the White Wolf of House Blackwood. Their captain removed his helmet, but not the regret from his face. "Claire Bennet, by order of the crown, you must return with us." The villagers gathered behind her. Henry's mother stepped forward. "She has done nothing but save our children. She is accused of creating the sickness," the captain said. The words moved through the crowd like winter wind. Claire felt no surprise, only exhaustion. Somewhere in the kingdom, someone needed her silence more than they needed the truth. She gathered her cloak and followed without resistance. As the carriage carried her north, the palace towers appeared through the snow, dark against the white horizon. Then pain struck beneath her ribs. Claire pressed a hand to her chest as the abandoned mate bond awakened with terrible clarity. A heartbeat echoed inside her, slow, strained, and familiar. Ethan. She closed her eyes and felt what he was hiding from his court. The cold had entered his blood. The king was not merely judging a plague. He was dying from it. The carriage climbed toward the palace, and every mile pulled Claire deeper into the memory she had spent 3 years trying to bury. The bond had awakened because Ethan was suffering, but this was not the first time his pain had entered her body. 3 years earlier, Frostfang had gathered beneath a harvest moon to celebrate the first anniversary of her crowning as Luna. Music filled the eastern courtyard. White lanterns floated above the stone arches, and Ethan had stood beside her with a rare warmth in his silver eyes. For one evening, Claire had almost believed the court had accepted the quiet Omega chosen by fate to stand beside its strongest king. Then a servant approached with a ceremonial drink. Claire noticed the wrong scent before Ethan raised the cup. It was faint, hidden beneath winter herbs, but her healing gift recognized sickness the way other wolves recognized smoke. She knocked the cup from his hand. A heartbeat later, confusion swept through the courtyard. Madeline Cross appeared at Claire's side, calm and concerned, holding a small blue vial she claimed had fallen from Claire's cloak. The royal healer examined it and announced that it contained the same forbidden frostroot found in the drink. Claire denied it. No one listened. Ethan had already swallowed enough to weaken him. His breathing turned uneven, his eyes bright with fever, and the poison pressed against the mate bond like black ice. Claire took his hands before the guards could pull her away. She had never tested the full reach of her gift, but she knew she could draw part of the sickness into herself. Warmth left her palms. Cold entered her veins. Ethan's breathing steadied while Claire's knees nearly gave way. Madeline watched from beyond the circle of guards, one hand resting over her heart, her expression arranged into perfect sorrow. "She is hiding what she did," Madeline whispered. By sunrise, witnesses had appeared. A kitchen worker claimed Claire had entered the royal pantry alone. A guard swore he had seen her speaking with an enemy messenger. A healer insisted only a Luna could have passed the palace wards with frostroot. Every lie fit neatly beside the next. Ethan, still fevered and unable to sense the poison Claire carried for him, stood before the entire court. "Claire Bennet," he said, his voice colder than the dawn, "I reject you as my Luna and sever you from my crown." The bond tore through her with silent force. She did not beg. She did not accuse Madeline without proof. She removed the silver circlet from her hair and placed it at Ethan's feet. "You were never worthy of my crown," he told her. Claire looked into the face of the man she had just saved and answered, "One day, you will learn what it cost me to stand here quietly." She left Frostfang before noon, carrying the remaining poison inside her so it could not return to him. Now, as the palace gates opened ahead of the carriage, Claire felt the same frozen presence moving through Ethan's heartbeat. The poison had found its way back. The carriage stopped beneath the eastern arch, and Claire stepped into a palace that felt colder than the mountains surrounding it. No servant greeted her. No familiar face offered comfort. The guards led her through corridors where her portrait had once hung beside Ethan's, but every frame had been replaced with winter landscapes and royal decrees. By the time they reached the Great Hall, the trial had already begun without her. Nobles filled the silver benches. Pack leaders stood beneath banners marked with frost and moonlight. At the center of the chamber, Madeline Cross faced the throne in a white court gown, calm as if she had come to receive an honor instead of condemn another woman. Ethan sat above them, his expression unreadable, but Claire felt the weakness behind it through the bond. Every breath he took seemed to drag against something frozen inside him. "Claire Bennett," Madeline announced. "You are charged with creating the white vein sickness and spreading it through the northern villages." A servant placed a narrow glass bottle on the evidence table. Pale crystals clung to the bottom. Claire recognized the container at once. It had belonged to the border clinic. "That was taken from my medicine cabinet," she said. "It held fever salts." "It now holds frostroot," Madeline replied. One witness claimed Claire had purchased rare herbs from a traveling merchant. Another said she had spoken bitterly about the crown. A third insisted he had seen silver frost appear wherever she walked. Their stories were polished, practiced, and empty. Claire listened without interrupting. She had learned 3 years ago that a lie repeated by powerful people could sound more convincing than truth, spoken by someone already condemned. Caleb Brooks stood near the throne, his jaw tense. Unlike the others, he avoided Madeline's gaze. When the final witness stepped away, Elder Nora Whitmore rose from the back of the hall. She was small, silver-haired, and wrapped in the dark blue robes of the Moon Temple. "These claims prove nothing," she said. "The bottle may have been altered. The witnesses contradict one another. No judgment should be made until the source of the sickness is tested." Madeline smiled. "Then let Snowglass test her." The hall went silent. Even Claire felt the name move through the room like a sudden drop in temperature. Ethan's fingers tightened on the arm of his throne. Nora turned toward him. "Your Majesty, Snowglass is not a common truth draft. It does not answer the question placed before it. It reveals the truth the soul is most desperate to hide. If she is innocent, what danger is there?" Madeline asked. Nora's eyes never left Ethan. "The danger is that the cup may not judge her." Claire followed Nora's gaze and saw a thin silver line appear at the corner of Ethan's mouth. He wiped it away before the court could notice, but she had already felt the sharp collapse of his heartbeat through the bond. He was getting worse. Ethan stood slowly. "Prepare the ritual." Nora lowered her voice. "Once she drinks, there will be no controlling what the Snowglass chooses to reveal." Claire looked at the man who had once trusted her with his life, and now trusted strangers with her fate. "Then perhaps," she said, "it is time this court saw something it could not arrange." The memory released Claire as the Snowglass reached her heart, and the great hall returned in a rush of silver light. Cold moved through her body in widening circles, not painful but searching, as if the ancient magic were opening every locked room within her soul. She heard the court draw a single frightened breath. She heard Elder Nora whisper a prayer beneath her breath. Above everything, Claire heard Ethan's heartbeat through the broken bond, uneven and fading, each beat weaker than the last. The tears on the marble continued to crystallize, spreading into the shape of a royal grave beneath the throne. Frost climbed over the clear blue surface, forming Ethan's name and the date 7 days away. No one spoke. The nobles who had arrived expecting Claire's confession now stared at their king as though death itself had entered the chamber and chosen a seat among them. Ethan descended the steps slowly. The hard authority in his face had vanished, leaving only disbelief. "This is deception," Madeline said. Her voice was calm, but her hands tightened at her sides. "She has corrupted the ritual." Nora turned toward her. "No one commands Snowglass." Claire tried to rise, but the cold held her close to the floor. Ethan moved before the guards did. He knelt beside her and reached for her shoulder, then stopped just before touching her, as if he remembered he no longer had the right. That hesitation hurt more than his distance had. "Claire," he said, and for the first time in 3 years, her name sounded like something he feared losing. She looked at the glowing grave between them. Beneath the date, new letters appeared one by one, carved by moonlight into the ice. "Killed by the bond he broke." A wave of alarm crossed the hall. Ethan's eyes lifted to hers. Claire felt the truth settle between them, heavier than any accusation. The poison had not simply returned to him. It had joined with the damaged mate bond, feeding on every year of silence, every denied truth, every moment he had chosen pride over trust. Madeline stepped forward. The ritual was meant to judge her. "This proves nothing about the sickness. It proves she was never its source," Caleb said from beside the throne. His voice carried clearly through the chamber. "The Snowglass found no guilt in her." Claire watched Madeline's expression tighten before the woman hid it behind concern. Ethan noticed too. Claire felt the shift in him, small but unmistakable. Suspicion had finally entered the place where certainty once lived. Then the frozen grave cracked down the center. Not apart but open, revealing a second message beneath Ethan's name. The king will fall beneath the blood moon unless the truth he buried is freely restored. Nora lowered herself beside the ice, her face pale. The blood moon rises in 7 nights, she said. Ethan looked at Claire, but she saw no command in his eyes now. Only a question he did not yet know how to ask. Claire gathered what remained of her strength and stood without taking his offered hand. You wanted the truth, she said quietly. Now you must decide whether you are brave enough to face it. Elder Nora remained beside the fractured grave until the last letter stopped glowing. Then she turned to Claire with an expression that held neither surprise nor fear, only the weight of something long remembered. There is one truth left, she said, and it belongs to her. The court shifted uneasily. Ethan stood a few feet away, pale beneath the torchlight, one hand braced against the arm of the throne. Claire could feel the cold inside him now. It moved through the broken bond like winter water beneath thin ice. Nora lifted Claire's hand and examined the faint silver lines beneath her skin. She is a Heartkeeper, the elder said. The name passed through the hall in whispers. Most had heard it only in old stories. Heartkeepers were rare omegas whose gifts did not end with healing wounds or easing fever. They could carry pain that did not belong to them. They could draw sickness from a true mate and hold it within their own body. Claire closed her eyes as the memory returned with painful clarity. The poison drink. Ethan struggling to breathe. Her hands around his. The cold leaving him and entering her. She had believed she was saving his life for one night. She had never understood what she had taken. Nora faced Ethan. 3 years ago, Claire absorbed the frost root meant for you. Her body contained it because the mate bond gave the poison somewhere to rest. Ethan's gaze moved to Claire's face. Then why did it return? His voice was quieter than anyone in the hall had ever heard it. Because you rejected the one person holding it away from your heart, Nora answered. The words landed without mercy. When the bond broke, the poison had no place to remain. It returned to its intended target, changed by grief, distrust, and time. That is what became the white vein sickness. Madeline shook her head. That is impossible. A single bond cannot infect a kingdom. Nora looked toward the frost covering the windows. The king is bound to Frostfang. His strength protects the land. His corruption spreads through it. Claire felt the truth in every frozen village, every sick child, every field buried beneath unseasonable snow. Ethan had not caused the plague by weakness. He had caused it by breaking what fate had entrusted to him. Caleb stepped closer. Can it be stopped? Nora's silence lasted too long. The bond must be restored before the blood moon. Ethan looked at Claire at once, but Nora raised one hand. Not by command. Not by law. Not by a crown. A Heartkeeper must choose freely, or the magic will reject the bond completely. The hall seemed to narrow around Claire. Once, Ethan's word had decided her place, her name, and her exile. Now his life depended on a choice only she could make. Ethan descended the final step and stopped before her. He did not reach for her. He did not order the court to leave. What must I do? He asked. Claire studied the man who had once believed strangers before the woman who carried his pain. The old part of her wanted to save him immediately. The wounded part wanted him to understand that forgiveness was not another royal privilege. For the first time, she said, you must wait for an answer you cannot force. The court waited for Claire to speak, but she did not look at the throne. She looked at the frost spreading across the windows, at the servants standing in silence, and at the frightened faces of the villagers who had been brought to witness her judgment. Ethan's life mattered, but so did every person who had suffered while the truth remained buried. Claire drew a slow breath. I will help stop the sickness, she said. Relief moved through the hall, but she raised one hand before anyone could celebrate. That does not mean I forgive what was done to me. Ethan lowered his head. I understand. Claire turned toward him fully. No, you are beginning to understand. Her voice remained calm, and that calm carried more strength than anger ever could. There will be conditions. Madeline took a step forward. Your Majesty, she cannot bargain with the crown. Ethan looked at her, and the cold authority returned to his face. She is not bargaining. She is deciding. The hall fell silent again. Claire felt the old shape of power changing around them. For years, the strongest voice had made the law. Now everyone was listening to the woman they had once erased. First, Claire said, you will declare before every northern pack that I was falsely accused. My name will be restored, not because I need a title, but because truth should not depend on rank. Ethan answered without hesitation. Done. Second, no Omega will ever again be forced to drink Snowglass or face judgment without evidence, counsel, and the right to speak. Several nobles shifted uncomfortably. Ethan did not look away from her. Done. Claire's chest tightened before the final condition. This was the one that mattered most. Third, the mate bond belongs to both of us. You will not command me to restore it. You will not use the crown, the law, or the fear of your death to pressure my choice. The decision will be mine. The words seemed to reach every corner of the chamber. Ethan stood very still. 3 years ago, he had taken her future with a sentence. Now she was asking him to surrender the one thing kings guarded most fiercely: control. Done, he said. No argument. No demand. No promise designed to move her heart. Just acceptance. Caleb stepped forward carrying the royal seal. Ethan removed the ring from his hand and pressed it into the warm wax beneath Claire's written conditions. The mark of House Blackwood appeared in silver. Let every pack hear this before sunset, he ordered. Claire Bennett is innocent. The judgment against her is revoked. The laws of trial will be changed. Madeline's face lost its careful calm. You would weaken the crown for her? Ethan looked toward Claire, but his answer was meant for the entire kingdom. A crown that requires silence from the innocent is already weak. For the first time, Claire felt something shift within the broken bond. Not forgiveness. Not love. Respect. It was small, fragile, and real. Then Caleb approached with a sealed ledger found in the royal healer's chambers. His expression had turned grave. Your Majesty, he said, we have proof the Frostroot was brought into the palace months before Claire returned. Madeline stepped backward. Claire saw fear flicker across her face. The truth was no longer approaching. It had arrived. Caleb broke the royal seal and opened the ledger beneath the moonlit windows. Every page carried dates, payments, and coded deliveries, but one name appeared again and again beside the shipments of Frostroot: Mason Reed, the royal healer. The final entry bore Madeline Cross's private seal. A low murmur moved through the chamber. Madeline's face remained composed, yet Claire saw her fingers tighten around the folds of her gown. Records can be forged, Madeline said, and fear can make loyal men see treason everywhere. Caleb placed a second document beside the ledger. Then explain this order directing the palace wards to ignore your carriages on the nights the sickness spread. Ethan read the page without speaking. Claire felt the change in him through the bond. His disbelief gave way to something colder and deeper. The understanding that the woman he had trusted had built her place beside him from Claire's ruin. Mason Reed moved toward the side door, but Elder Nora raised her staff. The ancient symbols carved into the floor brightened, sealing every exit with pale moonlight. No one was harmed. No one needed to be. The truth had closed the doors for them. Madeline looked at Ethan. I protected your throne. She made you weak. She kept me alive, Ethan answered. His voice was quiet, and the quiet carried farther than a roar. Madeline's gaze shifted to Claire. You still believe kindness will save this kingdom? No, Claire said. Truth will. The frost covering the windows suddenly thickened. Mason had reached the ceremonial table and overturned a vial into the remaining Snowglass. White mist poured across the marble, and the royal wards began to tremble. Ethan stepped between Claire and the spreading cold, but the curse inside him answered the magic. Silver lines flashed beneath his skin. His breathing turned rough, and a shadow of his great black wolf rose around him like smoke against moonlight. The court retreated in fear. Claire did not. She could feel the wolf's confusion through the bond, the pain of a creature trapped between instinct and memory. Ethan gripped the edge of the throne, fighting to remain himself. Stay back, he warned. Claire walked toward him. One step, then another. The air around him was cold enough to turn every breath white, But she remembered the man beneath the crown, the man who had once trusted her touch before fear taught him to doubt it. "Claire," Ethan said, his voice strained, "I will not let this curse reach you." "It already did," she replied. 3 years ago." She stopped within arm's reach and lifted her hand, but she did not touch him until he gave the smallest nod. Then her palm rested against his cheek. Warmth moved between them, fragile but steady. The shadow wolf lowered its head. Ethan's breathing slowed. "I am not afraid of your wolf," Claire whispered. "I am afraid of the man who forgets he has a choice." The darkness around him softened and disappeared. Ethan sank to one knee, not from defeat, but from the effort of choosing control over fear. Behind them, Caleb secured the poison vial while Nora restored the wards. Madeline stood silent at last. Ethan looked up at Claire, his silver eyes clear. "Then let my next choice be the truth," he said. "Before the blood moon rises, every pack will know what they did to you, and what I allowed." By sunset, the truth had crossed every northern pack. Caleb read the royal decree from the palace steps while messengers carried sealed copies to each village, fortress, and border settlement. Claire Bennett was innocent. The accusations against her were withdrawn. Madeline Cross and Mason Reed were stripped of authority and placed under lawful guard until a full council trial could begin. Ethan did not hide behind the throne. He stood before his people and admitted that his judgment had helped a lie become law. "A ruler who refuses to question his certainty can wound an entire kingdom," he said. "I did." The words did not erase 3 years of exile, but Claire watched the crowd hear them. That mattered. The next 6 days passed beneath a darkening moon. Royal healers followed Claire's instructions, replacing the tainted medicine in every village and warming the frozen wells with moonstone. The white vein sickness began to loosen its hold. Children opened their eyes. Fields softened beneath the snow. Still, Ethan grew weaker as the blood moon approached. On the 7th night, Claire met him alone in the moon temple. He had placed her silver circlet on the altar, but he did not ask her to wear it. "I will accept whatever you choose," he said. Claire studied him for a long moment. "I am not restoring what we were." Pain crossed his face, but he nodded. "I know." She stepped closer and placed her hand over his heart. "I am allowing us to become something different." Warmth moved through the broken bond, not as a chain but as an open door. Ethan's heartbeat steadied. The silver frost beneath his skin faded, and across Frostfang, the final layer of unnatural ice began to melt. In the great hall, the grave formed by Snowglass dissolved into clear water. Beneath it, one last message appeared on the marble. "When the Luna loves freely, the king may rise. If her heart is forced again, they both will fall." Claire returned to the court at dawn, but she did not take the throne beside Ethan. Not yet. She chose a seat at the council table, where her voice could shape the laws that had once silenced her. Ethan did not object. He followed her lead. For the first time, the kingdom did not see a rejected Omega rescued by a powerful king. It saw a woman who had rescued herself, and a king learning that true strength was gentle enough to let love choose its own time.